So, and I have to say, like, this turnout is amazing for like the last summertime. So that's exciting. And as all the other meetings I put together, I put way too much on the agenda. So we need to keep it going. But I will open it up to announcements. Does anyone have announcements that they'd like to share? And for those of you who don't know me, I think everyone here does know me, but I'm Heather Schumann. I'm at Steenbach Library. So any announcements? No? Okay, so I do have an announcement. I didn't want to put it on the agenda, I guess. Maybe keep it like a secret. I don't know why. It's because it's not a secret, but Andrea made an amazing book that Librarians Assembly is going to give to Ed as a retirement gift, and that we are considering this a gift from all of Librarians Assembly. The book is in the admin suite by Connie's desk. So please sign it. We'll present it to him at the retirement party, but I think we'll still keep it out after the retirement party for people to keep signing it, as Ed will be here till August. So, but I want to make that announcement that it should have gone out. Everyone should have got an email from Natasha, I think, yesterday about that. So information is in there, but I didn't put it on the agenda because I don't know. I should keep it a surprise, but it's not a surprise. So it's right outside his office. But it's a beautiful book. So you know what? So we'll get to that later. Okay. So do we have any staff who are new to a Librarians Assembly business meeting who would like to stand up and just introduce themselves? Please do.
Okay.
You have to stand if you don't want to. Sorry.
I'm Cameron Cook. I'm the Digital Curation Coordinator for Library System and Chair of Research Data Services. Okay.
You're welcome.
I guess me too. I'm Dave Bloom. I'm at Steenbach Library. This is my first time attending in person. So.
All right. Anybody else? No? Okay, great. So getting on to Librarians Assembly Steering Committee business, we had 3 opening places for the next school year, and we had 3 people volunteer to be on the committee, so we don't need to do an election or a vote, I mean to say. So I'd like to welcome the new members. I don't know if everyone, I don't think everyone here is here. So Dave is a new member. I know that Beth is out today, so she is not here, and I don't see Paloma. So, but welcome, Dave. Let's give Dave a round of applause for stepping up and joining the steering committee. So, thank you. Okay, so then we can go to Tom to do academic assembly updates.
All right. Okay, thank you very much for the introduction. So I'm Tom Durkin. I'm one of the representatives to the Academic Staff Assembly. I'm the representative to District 525. There's another district, 526, and the representative is Rebecca Payne. She's right over here. And Rebecca, if you have anything, just jump in. All right. So the Academic Staff Assembly meetings are open to all academic staff. The meetings are usually held on the second Monday of each month from 3:30 to 5 p.m. in Bascom Hall, room 272. There are no meetings usually in the summer, so the next meeting will be held in September. I think it's September 10th. Meeting notes are on the library wiki page under Academic Staff Assembly meeting notes. So you can see here, I think, on the screen. Hopefully it's big enough for everybody. Make it a little bit bigger. So on the wiki page, we've got the notes, and you can actually see we've got the notes for all of them going back a couple of years at least. So today we're going to be covering a couple of meetings, the April 9th meeting and the May 14th meeting. I'm not going to go through all the notes. I'll just touch on a couple highlights from each meeting. At the April 9th meeting, the Academic Staff Assembly Standing Committee's election results were announced, and from the campus libraries, Ian Benton was elected to the Districting and Representation Committee. So that's great. Hooray for Ian. Yay. For kind of skipping ahead to like the sort of like the main part of the meeting, the Chancellor, Rebecca Blank, addressed the ASA and talked about a whole series of things. I won't go through everything because she really spent the bulk of the meeting. I'll just kind of mention a few of the most significant things. So as many people have heard, UW Extension is moving back to campus. The UW Extension leadership will move back to UW-Madison as of July 1st. It's going to take some time for all of the staff to move back. I think I have heard it might take a year and a half or something like that for everybody to move back. But eventually, the entire UW Extension will be back here at UW-Madison. The legislature has finished their current session. UW-Madison ran its biggest advocacy campaign during the last budget cycle. There are no budget cuts in the coming year for the first time in at least a decade. So that's great for UW-Madison and the whole system, actually. UW-Madison employees will receive a 2% raise in July, hooray, and another 2% raise in January. UW-Madison expects to do merit and equity increases again in the coming year. So that's all great news for us again. The increase in revenue for UW-Madison has begun to show some payoffs. These include what's called the Bucky's Tuition Promise. UW-Madison will cover tuition and fees if household income is below Wisconsin average income. So that's great for the students. And then UW-Madison is moving forward with the Cluster Hire Program and the discretionary compensation fund. And then a couple big announcements. Lori Reeser was selected to lead and organize a broad portfolio of student services as the new Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs. And Lori Brooks has been appointed as the new Chief Information Officer and Vice Provost for Information Technology at UW-Madison. And then Provost Mangelsdorf kind of came in and had a few points at the very end. And probably the most important thing she mentioned was that the Board of Regents passed a new sexual harassment policy, as well as an updated policy on consensual relationships. And UW-Madison administration is working on a revised consensual relationship policy that will fit UW-Madison campus, and there will be one policy for the whole campus. So those are the most important points for April 9th. If you take a look at the minutes, you'll see some additional things that you might find interesting, but I'm going to skip ahead to May 14th. So during this meeting, one of the most important things that was covered, Wayne Guthrie, he's the Associate Vice Chancellor for Human Resources, gave an update on the titling and total compensation study. Everyone's received like a bazillion emails about this. So everyone's familiar with the parts that we've done so far, and that's sort of like discussing and creating the job groups, the subgroups, and the levels. So the thing that's coming up next is something called the job description process. And so I'm going to read the text directly from their description. UW-Madison's Title and Total Compensation Study, a joint project with UW System, launches a job description process that will involve employees campus-wide. Employees will work with their managers to review job descriptions in the summer and fall. So my understanding of this is that there will be job descriptions that will be created for each job class, for each job group, subgroup, and level, and then those job descriptions will be mapped to all of those, like the full title and total compensation structure. So that's something that will happen this summer. There is some information about this. I don't really know that much about it, but if you go to the minutes, you can see we added some links here. And so there's some information here about the orientations that were held back in April about this upcoming job descriptions process. And there's like a video that you can watch. So if you look at these different links, you can see some information. So here's just sort of like a brief information about the process. And then a very sensitive touchpad. There's a news item that you can read to learn a little bit more about it. And then I think this, oh, I pulled it too far. And then this is like a video. So if you watch the video, then you can learn about the whole process. And I guess everybody will be going through the job description process. I would ask Nancy Graf Schultz if you have more questions about it, but the information that's on them in the minutes will be very helpful. There was a report from the Committee on Women in the University, and sort of like the points that they discussed from the report. They're looking at early childhood care and education issues to see if there's capacity on campus for early childhood care for anyone on campus who needs that kind of a service. They're looking at developing a map of lactation spaces. They want to educate campus leadership about hostile and intimidating behavior. And then as the titling and pay initiative progresses, they want to work towards gender equity. And I think that the reports eventually get listed on the Academic Staff Assembly, so on the Academic Staff Assembly pages. So if you want to take a look at that report, I think you can. Then the last thing at that May 14th meeting was the Vice Provost report from Michael Bernard Donalds. He's the Vice Provost for faculty and staff. And he says that his main initiatives or projects he's going to be looking at over the upcoming year are working on putting together some workshops to deter hostile and intimidating behavior, creating some training for supervisors and managers. He's looking at the promotion and job advancement, like criteria, and he wants to work on this with the title and total compensation group of people. He's looking at better and more robust professional development opportunities for all staff, looking at the process of performance evaluations and that everyone on campus should be going through that process. And he wants shared governance to continue, and he's a really strong supporter of shared governance. And he wants our campus to be a fair and equitable workplace for everyone. So those are the main sort of highlights from the last two meetings. Does anybody have any questions about anything? All right, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Then we already do have a map for lactation spaces on campus. That's interesting that they mentioned that. Wisely, I think, puts it out. Alan, do you know? Oh, okay, they do. So they're already.
So it must be one of those one hand doesn't.
Yeah, they need to. Okay, now I have Michael to come up and talk about ULC.
Usually the chair of the ULC changes every semester, but or every year, because this is a transition year in order to create continuity on ULC as we welcome and start working with the new VPL. The current chair, Sabina Gross from the German department, offered to stay on for a second year and was unanimously approved. As far as our reps, Ian Benton will be rotating off and Ellen Jacks will be joining me as the two non-voting library representatives. All of the April meeting, which was their last meeting for the semester, was spent talking about the facilities master plan, specifically the university committee's request that the university library committee draft some sort of an advisory report to go along with the consultant's report when it goes through the campus planning process. That report is available online from the library's homepage. If you just search University Library Committee, you'll get to their page and there's a link to it. The conclusions had 6 specific sections and recommendations, which I will briefly summarize since you can very well go read them yourself. One is leveraging the library mall as a unique resource, that space bounded by Memorial and Historical and Kohler and Memorial Union and the University Club and the Red Gym is something that makes this campus unique, and we shouldn't lose sight of that. Second is discipline-specific user needs, particularly making the case of why Kohler Art Library should remain as a distinct library and not be subsumed into a re-envisioned memorial. Third is fostering appreciation for open and easy collections and making the case that library services for arts and humanities and social sciences should be different than library services for STEM disciplines. The fourth was embracing the value of print collections in the digital age for their own value and making the case that even though we're underfunded as far as collections compared to our peers, our library is actually a better library and provides a better library experience because we have diverse and deep collections in many different areas. The fifth was acknowledging that we have more stuff than we have space. We will have off-site remote storage, but what facilities do we need to make best use of those off-site storage? And they had suggestions like regular transportation to Verona and reading rooms at Verona 2 or reading rooms on this campus where things from Verona where a large collection of things can be brought and you can examine them rather than having to just pick one single volume and request. And finally, they said that as the process goes forward, that we need more stakeholder input. Carrie Cruz will be the first to tell you that they had plenty of opportunity for input and chose not to take advantage of it, but it is significant that the ULC report the title of it is Advisory Report on the Facility Master Plan Planning Process, as opposed to on the consultant's report, acknowledging a point that Ed's made over and over again, which is the consultant's report is the first and not the final step in a 25-year process. Any questions on any of that? Okay.
So I've got Peggy next, but I kind of think we should follow that up with Carrie. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
So Karen, if you want to come up as many of you know, we did 3 facility master plans Q&A sessions with Carrie and Ed. And instead of recording the sessions and making people watch, it was like they were 1.5 hour long sessions. So like we just did a summary. So I'll put this summary up on the Librarians Assembly wiki so people can access it. And it just goes through the intro that Carrie did and then some suggestions that came out of the meetings and then also the questions that came up. So I don't know if there's anything.
Yeah, well, I want to thank Heather and everybody on the Librarians Assembly who actually coordinated the Q&A sessions and also the people who came. And also the incredible note-taking. So Heather took all kinds of notes at all 3 sessions and then went through and created this document to summarize and deduplicate and organize things so that they're kind of, because several things were covered at multiple sessions, but in different places. So,
but a lot of the questions were not duplicated, which is really interesting.
Which is also really great. But this summary document that has been created is really great. So if you want to get a sense of all the kinds of things that were asked across the 3 sessions, I encourage you to look at that, and you're going to link to it from the Librarians Assembly page, right?
Yeah, we'll put it on that. Yeah.
Right. So a couple of the key points that I think would be good for everybody to just be aware of going forward. So one of the key clarifications around the pushback about the Memorial Library and the amount of materials that the plan is recommending get moved out of Memorial is that the report is based on, in terms of the numbers and the amount of square footage that is being assigned sort of in the future version of the 3 hubs, that is based on calculations that can be adjusted in any number of ways. And they were calculated on sort of the most generous distribution of collection space, ironically, to support browsing. So wide aisles and shorter shelving and less full shelves and things like that. So even just and not compact shelving. So even by just making decisions about the type and amount of shelving and height and compact and all of those things, you could have the exact same sort of envisioned Memorial Library footprint with the exact same amount of square footage assigned to collections and up the number of collections to remain significantly, really significantly. So I can't tell you the math on that exactly, but that combined with collections that make sense to be targeted for moving offsite. So we have a number of collections that are not currently browsable. that we have a number of, or parts of Memorial Library, that if those were moved to offsite storage, Doug has said that there are, I don't know the exact number, but almost 1 million duplicate titles. 900 and some thousand, it's some really high number. So even just deduping collections and really targeting the things, we can drastically change the number of collections that could stay in Memorial Library or on campus. So that was a key point that that Doug has done some work on in terms of thinking through those things, and so that is definitely a communication that we're going to work on getting out there. So next steps for us as libraries, so Ed and Natasha and I actually have a meeting scheduled in a couple of weeks to work on sort of what's the next communication out to campus. We're again kind of struggling with this summer issue where we don't want to appear like we're not engaging the appropriate people, but obviously figuring out how to communicate next steps. So it's not to say like everything's fine, we're not going to have any trouble. There still will be a lot of books that will need to move off-site for a long-term management of our collections and appropriate stewardship regardless. But the drastic number of either 25% or 15%, depending on what perspective you're taking, we don't have to worry about that being a number that we're dealing with, and that can be affected significantly. So that's a key point. We did, since these Q&A sessions, we did actually have the meeting with the campus planning committee, which was sort of the last step in terms of the campus information sharing through formal channels. So one of the other key questions that came up is what's done, what's approved. There is no formal approval process, but there is sort of this campus administrative consensus that yes, this is now officially, a process that has been completed. Ed and I presented at the campus planning committee. It was the same meeting with the Letters in Science master plan. So again, we were paired with Letters in Science for the design review board. Those two plans very much work in tandem with each other in terms of South Campus development. So it happened without drama. There were, a couple of questions from the campus planning committee, but nothing that was of particular concern or issue. The University Library Committee's advisory report, was shared with the campus planning committee as well. So we definitely acknowledged the concern that the library's plan had brought forth. So that is part of the considerations and also sort of officially part of what we're putting out there. So Michael mentioned that the University Library Committee report is on the University Library Committee's page. We also linked to it on the Facilities Master Plan page. So that was how University Library Committee was wanting us to move forward, to identify what we call the Master Plan report as the consultant's report. So kind of recognizing that this is what the consultants have pulled together, then officially kind of as part of the context, here is the University Library Committee's official response. And then next steps are what we need to articulate next in terms of implementation. And obviously that will be in conjunction with the new Vice Provost for Libraries. So it doesn't make sense for us to do that next steps implementation thing before she gets here, but we do need to kind of plan that communication. So I think those are the main points that I would want to make sure everybody is clear on. I thought I had one more thing and now I'm forgetting, but I'll just see if there are any additional questions at this point. Maybe I'll remember the one more thing. South Hub? Yeah, I mean, the South Hub has generally been ignored in the response. So people seem to like either not care or not notice or not. But I do think one of the points that I was making at these sessions was that we shouldn't ignore the South Hub, even though it's like the furthest out, the 25 years out, that's a really exciting thing. As I said, it aligns with Letters in Science. They have a whole lot of moving parts. There's a whole lot of uncertainty as to what might be exactly where in the long term. But what we know is that a lot of Letters in Science departments are also going to be moving. And A significant part of that will end up in the South Campus because that's where campus is growing. So this notion of being sort of in the neighborhood of and adjacent to your collections, I think it's important for us to acknowledge that some of the departments who currently use Memorial Library for collections will eventually be using the South Hub Library, probably, and that library is also going to have significant collections. So that's where the difference between the 25% and 15% often happens. Is 25% is the overall reduction recommended. 15% was what they were picturing for Memorial, but that's because there was another big chunk of hundreds of thousands of volumes in the South Hub Library. So we really don't know which collections because we don't know, maybe we'll be sharing a building with a particular department and we want to make sure that collections related to that department are in that building, or maybe there are other departments sort of within a block or two of the South Hub Library, and it would make sense for collections associated with those research areas to be there. But humanities and social sciences, sort of broadly writ, that's a lot of departments. Some of those departments will actually be in the neighborhood of the South Campus Library. So that's another thing that if we all kind of internalize that as a long-term vision and can help communicate that, I think that'll be helpful.
Okay, thanks, Mary.
Great, thanks.
Thanks for your work on that.
It's a lot. Okay. So maybe halfway through the agenda. Okay, so Peggy, and I had to close your PowerPoints. I don't know if that. Okay, Peggy, we'll talk about the treasury report.
Just give me a second to get it up. I downloaded it, so should be here. Somewhere. Right. All right, why doesn't this work? Can you see what I'm doing?
Like another one here to the right.
Oops. That's cool.
Just search PowerPoint.
Just search PowerPoint. Thank you.
Oh, there it is.
All right. See, this is why I had that ready to go.
Look.
If you go to slideshow,
Thank you. Where's slideshow? I can't see without my glasses.
On the bottom right by the Zoom, just to the left of the Zoom line, there's a little icon. Go to your right. Right. Left, to the left, down.
there you go.
Thanks for being patient with me. All right, also, my glasses back on. Also, I'm sorry for all you guys out in left field over here. Got it over there? Okay, yeah. I didn't realize so many people were going to come, so I only set up for over on this side. We could have actually moved it to the middle and then.
It's on that screen.
I know, but the one isn't working, and so and we're standing all the way over here, so I apologize. I should have set it up better. What I'm going to talk about today is the budget update. So we projected this year that we were going to spend about $1,100. And I wanted you to know what we spent our money on this year. And mostly what we spent our money on was food. So we spent $186 on food for programming. So that's like the Eat, Talk, Run, and any of the other programming that you might have come to, like the book talk or anything else. And I'll tell you that you're really lucky too. $186. We spent more than $186, but a lot of people donated donated stuff. Donated tea, they donated things to drink, they donated other food. So actually more than $186, but that's the money that we paid back to them. We spent $700 on catering for the high tea. That is a ridiculous amount of money, isn't it? For that food that we got, $700, but that's what catering costs. Costs $700.
And that was the expensive cake.
That's the expense.
No,
Yeah,
that was the inexpensive one.
right, that was the that was that was the less expensive catering. So it cost $700 for that food. So that's how much we spent on that food. And it cost us $50 to rent the room. So that's where our money went for that. And then we spent $41 just on supplies for the book that Ariel made. We didn't have to pay any money to have somebody make that beautiful book. That's just for the supplies. And she donated some other things as well. So again, we got off very cheaply on that. So that's where your money went this year. And the year's not over yet. We still have some more expenses that we have to pay for yet. So altogether, we spent $977. That's what we've spent this year. That's what we've spent your money on. So right now, we have $128 left in our budget for this year. So where does that money come from? I keep saying this. You. This money comes from you, from your dues. So this year, we had 40 individuals pay dues. That comes to $765. Remember, we suggested that you pay $20 in dues, so that's $765. Now, 17 of you kindly gave extra money, so we raised an extra $195 through that extra donations that you made. 47 people came to the high tea, and we charged $5 for the high tea. So we made $240 off charging for the high tea. Now, 7 people just paid to go to the high tea. They didn't pay dues. They just paid for the high tea only. So that's 40 people were members, 7 people were non-members. Does that make sense? Okay, so in total, we've collected $1,200 for our budget for next year. So that's what we have to spend next year. When did people pay their dues? Well, 17.5% or 7 people paid before the high tea, and 8 or almost everybody paid at or after the high tea. Only 2 people paid after the high tea. Myself, because I was doing the budget, and one other person who was ill and sent her check afterwards. Only 2 people paid early in the year, and everybody else paid 1 to 3 weeks before the high tea. So what makes people pay their dues?
Going to
the high tea. That's the thing that makes people pay their dues. So here's my proposal for changing the structure of our dues. I'm just proposing this. I want you to think about it, and I'm not saying we have to change it today. I just want you to start thinking about it. I want to change Librarians Assembly dues to include the high tea fee by adding $5 to the suggested dues. There's not a single solitary person who paid dues that didn't go to the high tea. 100% of the people who paid dues went to the high tea. So there's nobody that paid dues but said, I'm not going to the high tea. Okay. So why should we do this? I think we should do this because, like I said, 100% of the people who pay dues go to the high tea. Because if we do this, then the high tea charge could be rolled into the dues, which would then be tax deductible. Now, you all got your receipts this year, right? And I told everybody that save these receipts on your taxes. You can now say, you know, this money is tax deductible. Well, you know, then that $5 would be rolled into that, and that $5 would be tax deductible as well. The third reason is because it would be a whole lot less confusing when we're collecting money at the high T. You all stood in line for a while we were taking your money because we were having to write down, did you pay your fee for the high T? Were you paying your dues? How much did you pay? It was really confusing having to write all this down while we were taking your money. So that's the third reason why I'd like to do it. Why should we not do it? Of course, there's a reason why maybe we shouldn't do it. Well, $5 isn't really, you know, a significant amount of money to add your tax deductions. I mean, it's not going to make or break you on your taxes. It's really not. And maybe it'll have unintended consequences. I'm not sure. And we always need to think about unintended consequences, right? So here's a couple of unintended consequences I thought about. Well, non-members still feel welcome. You know, right now, everybody's paying a fee to go to the high T. Everybody, whether you're a member or a non-member, you pay a fee to go to the high T. Now we're sort of, you know, if we did this, it would change the structure where, you know, even though you are paying to go to the high T, it wouldn't be a separate fee to pay to go to the high T. You know, would that have an effect? Would people feel funny about that? And would we collect less money? You know, would that mean we're collecting less money? Not everybody pays the suggested amount of dues. We suggest that you pay $20. We suggested this year that you pay $20. So if we had the same suggested amount next year, we would suggest that you paid $25, right? Because we would roll in that extra $5. Now, some people aren't able or don't want to pay what we suggest, right? So some people pay less. Wouldn't this make people feel uncomfortable? Would they not like it? Would we end up collecting less money by doing this? I don't know. So this is some things to think about. I just want to get the conversation going. It's a little thing. We don't need to make any, you know, changes in the amendments or rules. So, you know, let me know what you think. Yes?
Yes, without revealing, you know, privacy and all this kind of thing. Of the folks who were high T only, were any of those non-academic staff who we don't
Yes.
necessarily ask to pay membership, which makes sense.
Yes.
And so,
Yes. One thing that's difficult for me when people are coming and paying for the high T, I can't always tell if you're academic staff or if you are not. And even afterwards, even though I know your name, I still don't know. There's nowhere for me to look up if someone's academic staff or not. I do know that we have 121 academic staff. So 40 people have paid dues. We potentially have 121 people that could pay dues. Any other questions? Yes.
Thank you for the thorough report. It's very interesting. I was just wondering how, I have two things, wondering how this compares to, say, like some previous years. And also I noticed a change in language because we're not allowed to collect dues. And if we're calling it dues, that we may need to reevaluate that. And I don't know whether that has any impact on donation, because I think that it's been called donations, or that's what was suggested because of our status. And we're not allowed to collect dues, technically.
I thought it was called dues in the bylaws.
Well,
$5 suggested dues.
Well, we're not allowed to collect dues, it's donations. And I think
suggested something, but I don't know what that is.
Does the fact that it's suggested mean that we're not requiring, and that somehow manages? So in a way, it's a donation. You're choosing to because it's only suggested.
Yeah, what I just would like to suggest, when we're inviting people, encouraging people to contribute, to pay attention to the language. Just say,
Well, it's a good thing to have clarified
Mhm. And I have my own donation.
Yeah, I guess I would like to know, I don't know where to find that. Where,
Well, this is from just the years in Librarian Assembly, from when I was treasurer also, way back, and it's just, I think that, I mean, I don't know, maybe it's changed.
no, I don't think anything's, I don't know.
Other Cassies do not collect.
We're the
dues
only
per se,
Cassie that collects
or
dues or
donations.
donations.
Yes.
We're the only
Right.
ones.
Yeah, it's just a really minor,
Because everybody, we represent
Issue.
everyone, no matter
Mhm.
what, whether you contribute or not.
Right.
As a Cassie, we represent everyone.
Yeah.
So you don't have to be a member to be represented by us.
And the always thing that worries me is with the classification of dues versus donations is if we say we're collecting dues, do we then need to worry about tax?
exactly.
Either incorporating or state and federal taxes.
Okay, we'll look into that. We need to keep the meeting going. So,
Yeah, but no, we don't. We don't have to worry about taxes. That I've looked up. But send me your questions, would you? That would be great. And thank you. And if anybody wants a tour afterwards of the library, Gail and I would be happy to give you a tour afterwards.
okay, so Amy is up next with updated Cassie.
Hey, I attended, there's a twice a year meeting of Cassie representatives from across campus. And so some of these are primarily announcements and discussion points that, yeah. So, excuse me, there has been a development of a hostile and intimidating behavior workshops. And those will soon be made available to units and departments across campus later this summer and beyond. So if we as a Cassie wanted to host either ourselves or with another Cassie, that will be available to us as far as a programming thing. Same thing, it was just a reminder that as the libraries already did do an active shooter training, that's in the process of being updated. And I know that they're also updating some videos that go with that. So that might be something to look into adding. Also, the academic staff, the Office of Academic Staff mentioned that they do a professional development grant brown bag series that we could invite them to do programming. Also coming from Heather Daniels, I believe it was that everyone soon, didn't define soon, would be getting, we're talking academic staff, should be getting a letter about new appointments in response to this updated pay plan. Normally, people only get these letters if there's a change in salary, but this is across the board. Everybody should be getting a letter apparently this year. It's an unusual situation. So that's all it was just sort of an announcement that came by. Also noted was that there's this, and some of you may know about this, a new online performance management system is being rolled out across campus. And as I understood from the discussion that only a few units or schools are actually live with this or it's being developed. But as a Cassie, it's understood that Cassie, whether it's a steering group membership across campus, in other departments, people are from the Cassie are involved in the development of that assessment system for that department in terms of looking at what's being assessed, the gradations and all this kind of things. So I just mentioned this now in case other folks hear about it. We don't yet, as the Librarians Assembly is the Cassie for the GLS. At least I'm not aware that we're actively involved in that process yet, but I would expect that might be happening within the GLS. Also, just as a sort of side note, a discussion point that came up was, of course, about the title and compensation project and the review of and reassessment of job description across campus. And so there was some discussion about how other Cassies and representatives from the Cassie groups
might make themselves available to academic staff within their departments to assist them as individual staff members are developing their descriptions. It was just presented that in some departments, some people expected some difficulties with supervisors' willingness and availability to modify individual descriptions to actually reflect individual staff members' responsibilities, let's say. And so other CASIs were just expressing that they saw it as their role to assist their staff, because that's where basically the CASI is supposed to be representative and representing academic staff in policies and administrative things, I guess. So I guess that's all. The other main point was, and again, it's just a FYI, that with UW Extension's move into, or integration into UW-Madison, there was some discussion and representation from the Extension CASIs. They have multiple CASIs, and questioning how things work here on campus. And so they wanted to learn more about that.
So just about the review system, Anne Murphy-Long is kind of been leading up the implementation of that, and she's been working with the operational leadership team to get feedback on the questions. So I would encourage you, if you want the CASI to be involved,
well,
to connect with her, because I mean it's in the process of she's in the process of making plans to roll that out. So.
Right. So I mean, it is our, this was what I typed out as a quote from somebody that, oh no, it's not in here, that CASIs have somebody has stated a right to,
sure. I'm just saying, it's like, it's like on that verge of.
Right, I don't know if I would have expected administration to reach out to the CASI as a responsibility on the administration side. I mean, certainly we'll reach out to them and see where that stands, but yeah. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Annie. Okay, and then we got Pamela, programming update. I think if we just get out of this.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But we can get back in. And then is that, do you want to do the shout out first?
So as you know, the program committee is very keen to acknowledge people's efforts, and we received a shout out for Ariel today. Ariel graciously agreed to handcraft a book for library staff to sign and give to Ed Van Gemert for his retirement, procured the materials, designed the cover, and crafted a book in a very short time frame. I was privy to some of the emails that went back and forth. There was a lot of logistics that went into this. So Librarians Assembly thanks her for her fantastic work, and that's the part I look forward to. So, so round of applause for Ariel. If you, I'm not sure what's, if you would like to give a shout out, know that there is a option right here, and at this point these emails come to me, and I will be happy to make a slide for our next business meeting, which will be in September. So you have all summer to think about who you'd like to recognize, so please consider that. The program committee is winding down, not quite finished yet, because one of the things that we would like to do is mention that there's going to be a conference sharing program that we're organizing. This is actually inspired by a conversation with Nola Walker, who was thinking that we need a way to share all the information that we learn or actually present at conferences. So if anyone is interested, Nola actually already signed up, please just follow that link, go to the Google form. We'll try to keep everything between 5 and 10 minutes, but if you've presented at a conference, if you've attended a conference, I know some people get to go to conferences that are a little bit more, I won't say bizarre, but exotic, that was the word I was looking for. And so if you get to do that, if you want to share back information with the community as a whole, we'd love to hear this information. Please do register. It's July 25th, which is a Wednesday. We thought we'd do it over the noon hour, so you can bring a brown bag to Memorial 126, and we'll go from there. Also, we have kind of finished up our e-talk run programming for the year. And what we'd really like to know is if you would like that program to continue, what you thought about the high tea, if you have any information on the cost of the food, the other programming that we did, the library lunches, the book sharing, please give us your feedback. There's a survey that was in a link that was in the agenda that Heather sent out today. I will send out another dedicated email just about the email, with an email link to this survey, because we really do want to know what you find useful. There has been some thought that maybe some of the e-talk runs were so interesting that they should be a full hour-long program. And so if we wanted to alternate with kind of longer, more in-depth programming, if there's a subject, I know we used to do information on like retirements and or you know, kind of mid-career, early career opportunities. So, you know, if there's something that you think is missing that you would like to see, please let us know, because we really do want to make sure that our programming is useful and helpful to you. So I couldn't have done it all without the work of Anne Glorioso, who isn't here today because it's her birthday, and Beth Harper. So I'd like to thank everyone who was on the Program and Awards Committee. And if you have any questions, I'll finish up. Okay, thank you.
So let's give Pamela a round of applause. So 8 minutes left and 2 rather large topics to cover. But perhaps, okay, so I've got welcome and transition planning for Lisa Carter. And that's going to be really difficult, I think, to do in this kind of a forum. Perhaps, I don't know if we need to hold a special meeting for this. I don't know if people have thoughts on this topic because it is rather large. And Connie, I think I overheard you say at the beginning that already there's planning of like who she's meeting when Lisa gets here.
There's a list of people that she needs to probably in her first couple of months. And it's being perked, you know, hasn't been a conversation with her yet, but instead of an all staff, assuming she's not going to be ready to speak to the group on initiatives or whatever, that we would do welcomes and go out to different libraries and have more meet and greets kind of thing. But again, there's been no conversation with her, so.
Right. So it's hard to do this without being in conversation with her. You know, because she's going to have things that she'll want to do when she gets there too. So how can we be welcoming and also not give her space to do what she wants to do? Yeah, Ian.
I think that I think one, I think it's worth another conversation. Like, I think a special meeting seems wise, and perhaps we can try and create some structure around that special meeting, so it's not just a discussion, but we can kind of maybe have a few ideas of what priorities might be ahead of time. People could email in thoughts, but I also feel like in terms of what we're representing, my personal take is that people will be representing themselves, all of the links that Connie's talking about. Just going to have the opportunity to meet some folks directly. So I would very much want Librarians Assembly to focus on the like the academic staff that are part of the library too, and I think communicating. I guess I would want to be communicating what we all can and are ready to do to move forward. Like, I think that I heard in the listening sessions a lot of excitement about new vision, about what our new VPL might bring to the table, and I think that this group might best. I would love if we could reiterate that in some way, and perhaps channel some of that excitement into specific actions or specific ways that we interact with it. A little unformed, a little squishy, but
right. I mean, how do we tell our story and where we want to move? And I think that you are working on that. Like, that is happening, right? Like,
yeah. I mean, so I know, like, Leslie has asked all the people who report directly to her to put together profiles for their different areas. And I think other AULs are doing something similar so that she'll have, at least from us, a 3-page document that with lots of links, I imagine, to other things. So there's planning for that, but I think there's a lot of role for how do we, help her engage with us as individuals and as units and with this body more. I think that's if I were thinking about it, I would be interested in having that conversation about like how Librarians Assembly can work with Lisa in a way that helps her even like think about governance on campus, because that's not something, if you haven't been here, it's different than a lot of campuses. A lot of campuses don't have academic staff governance.
And Librarians Assembly Steering is suggesting that when she gets here, we suggest a regular meeting with her so that someone, like a few people on Librarians Assembly Steering Committee meets with Lisa like at least quarterly or something, or once a semester. Emily, did you?
Yeah, along the same lines, and also because Ohio State librarians have faculty status there.
Right.
So it's extremely important for us to really help her understand how our system, how we are different and how it works. And what I would like to suggest is perhaps a written communication, because when she hits the ground here, I mean, we're going to be competing with a lot of other people from Bascom to off campus. And we wouldn't want to make her time a little less stressful. So perhaps some written communication where we talk about these things. It may be on a page or 2, or maybe maximum 3 pages, like Leslie has asked some of us to do for our units and departments. And then in that communication, ask to schedule a time for a conversation with the group or with, I don't know, steering committee. I'm not sure that we want the larger group at first, but maybe start her light with maybe the steering committee.
Yeah. Even a larger group. We can make a live guide.
Exactly.
But that idea of the profile is an interesting one, and just like summing it up. And you can, there's lots of stuff on the website already, right? So you can guide her too, but.
How about maybe what has been already mentioned of starting light and then going into a larger group might help. I'm thinking that she's here for the long run. She will have opportunities to sit and be part of a business meeting or this type of meeting. Later on, it might be easier that way to ease her in. And I would suggest that we go from a small, maybe just a steering committee or a smaller group within the steering committee to meet her first. Then the second meeting being more of a social thing. Not like, okay, we're getting down to business and here, blah, 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 blah. She'll have a lot of that already. Why not keep it a little bit still light, because as I said, opportunities for her to participate in another meeting where she has a better idea of what's going on might be better later in the semester, maybe in the spring even.
Yeah, that sounds good, Carrie.
I would just add that a focus on our governance role in this body, and I think the fact that this group comes together and says, here's what's happening at Academic Staff Assembly, here's what's happening with the Cassies, here's what's happening, that this group also threads together all of the pieces of our governance. I think that would be a really useful thing for somebody to know, that that's part of what Librarians Assembly does, is raise awareness for everybody about these other kind of governance roles that are also out there.
No, I'm sorry.
I think there's a lot of really great ideas. I'm also looking at the time, and I think that we can have a lot of discussion around this. So I just wanted to advocate for the special meeting.
Okay. I think we need that.
And I think you've got some good stuff to kind of start to craft an agenda to have a conversation in a slightly more structured environment.
Yeah. Can we have this over the summer? Yeah.
Yeah.
We have to. Okay, and then I'm sorry, but just I sent it out already. I hope people read it. This is just going to be a first reading of a proposed amendment to the bylaws, where we would change the name of Librarians Assembly to Libraries Assembly, because we have staff, we have academic staff in the libraries who do not have the title of librarian. So this would be inclusive, like Cameron. So this would be, and many people in LTG. So this would be inclusive of the academic staff in the libraries who don't have librarian as a title. So this is the first reading of this. We will continue this discussion in future meetings. I just want to say, I don't know if you can see, I feel like when I tried to make it bigger before, yeah, it was kind of wonky. And everyone should have this in your emails. We're proposing, that's the, there you go. This is the proposed amendment here. Library assembly without the possessive, because it's not academic staff's assembly. It's not the United States possessive, it's like Senate. It's, so I don't think we need the possessive. Anyway, that's why that has been proposed that way. It looks weird. Any questions? We almost wrapped up on time. And then we have a tour going. So thanks, everybody. Have a great summer. Look for the special meeting.